Boy, it sure is fun watching the Dems go crazy over this shooting in Texas. Now, I don't want to seem insensitive. Obviously, very sad when kids die. But it's really hard to take this from the people who just had their last meltdown a couple weeks ago over a late Supreme Court case that would restrict their right to kill kids. And here they are. You know, how many millions of kids have been killed since Roe v. Wade, was handed down from Mount Zion by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court back in whatever year that was, 1971, 1972. And the prospect of that ruling being overturned and states starting to pass laws which will make it illegal for people to kill kids, that's so terrible. But then a psychopath goes into an elementary school and guns down 14 children, which is very tragic. But all of a sudden they're upset about that. There's absolutely no logic here. There's no genuine emotion. Well, maybe there is genuine emotion, but there's nothing relatable. I can't empathize with these people. I have no idea what they care about, and that's really a bad place to be in a country, because I think that your average, I probably have that in common with, your average Republican voter at this point. You look at the Dems. Your average Dem, a liberal, not a far leftist, not a socialist. Those people tend to be more rational, ironically. When you have fringe views, you tend to have thought through them a little more than if you have mainstream views. But the mainstream left, your average liberal, completely incoherent. I cannot relate to what they feel, to why they hold the views that they do, why 1 week they're screaming and they're rioting over their supposed right to kill kids being threatened, and this week they're supposed to be rioting over kids being killed. I guess the problem is I'm taking what they're saying too much at face value. We all know that the libs are not mad about these kids being killed. They can't be, because they're all for killing kids. Even, after birth, post-birth abortion, as they call it, is gaining traction. It's a woman's right to choose, we're told. Now, it's not a mainstream left position yet, but give it a couple of years, and it'll get there. What they're mad about fundamentally is people owning guns. Increasingly, over the years, it's one of the issues that I guess just like abortion, that the country has become more and more divided about. And increasingly, people are either, rabidly pro-gun, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think that's the consistent position. I really think that you either like guns or you don't. I think that is the way that people should look at it. Just like with abortion, the more you learn about it, either you think it's okay to kill a kid or you don't. That's just where the science has come out to. And it's the same thing when it comes to the right to bear arms. Guns aren't really all that different from each other. They all pretty much do the same thing. You pull the trigger, they go bang, and if you're pointing it at somebody, when you do that, there's a very strong possibility you're going to kill them. And so anyone who really knows much about guns understands that there's not really a reason for drawing much of a legal distinction between any of them, because they all pretty much get the job done. Sure, if you didn't have an AR, you could use a Winchester. Is it exactly the same thing? No, but it'll get the job done. You can shoot it pretty darn fast. And so Dems, your average lib, increasingly find themselves on the side of just hating people with guns. And so while they're not that offended by children being slain, it's something that they do on a regular basis. It's something that they're proud of. That's why they shout their abortions. I will never forget the first time that I saw a college student with a sticker on her laptop that said, "Shout your abortion." But they understand, hey, you right-wingers, you care about kids dying, and so I'm going to take your own moral principles and turn them around on you and say, hey, because you like your guns so much, kids are getting killed because of you, and yet you say you're supposed to be pro-life. They do this all the time. They say, oh, you can't be pro-life and pro-gun. Yet it's always the anti-gun people, it's always the anti-gun people, who aren't pro-life. And so they don't give a damn about 14 kids dying. I'm not going to listen to, these people sob, whether they're on CNN or MSNBC or Fox even. They all do the same thing. Oh, this is such a terrible tragedy. We're so sad. Oh, they're not sad. They're just trying to own the ultra MAGA guys. Or I guess the maggots, as they call them, MAGATS. And so you've got maggots constantly trying to own the libtards, and when there's a shooting, the libtards try to own the maggots. And so that's all this is about. There was a lot of screaming. Poor old Beto O'Rourke, who's not going to be the governor of Texas, decided to make a fool of himself today and go down to the press conference that the current governor of Texas, who's not a great guy by any means, was holding, and he started heckling him from the audience. I believe it was Beto. I was listening to this on the radio, so I didn't quite catch everything. I should have double-checked. But I'm pretty sure it was him, because I heard an interview that was definitely with Beto, outside of the event. I presume he was kicked out, and he was just shouting, and I think it was the mayor of the town where the shooting happened who was, yelling at him and saying, "You're way out of line, kid. Get out of here." And you couldn't really hear anything through the microphone. It was just sort of incoherent screeching about, whatever it was. He elaborated on it when he went outside, but it was something stupid like, "How is it that this kid who's barely 18 years old is able to buy a gun in our society, man? Like, what is that even about?" And there's no response to that. What? He's not questioning why did a legal adult with no criminal record, why was he able to buy a gun? He's not really questioning that. All he's doing is just trying to agitate, against people owning guns in general. That's all it's about. It's nothing in particular. It's not like there's some certain amount of the right to bear arms that we could infringe upon, and all of a sudden we live in a peaceful world. Everyone knows that's not the case. What it comes down to at this point is that libs think that gun owners should be in jail for the crime of being gun owners. It's that simple. That's the energy that Beto is trying to channel when he shouts, "How is this kid who's barely 18 able to own a gun?" So then, of course, there's calls to Congress. Oh my gosh, we have to do something. And there was Joe Manchin was trending this morning because he said, "Well, golly, I'd be all for, some common sense gun reform," which means absolutely nothing. Joe Manchin knows what he's doing. There's going to be nothing of the sort. He's from West Virginia, like the second most red country or state in the country. He's not going to vote to do anything to infringe upon the Second Amendment, because he does want a political future in the state of West Virginia. So he has no incentive to do that. So he's just out there, speaking hypothetically about some kind of proposal that he knows will never materialize, that he would be comfortable voting for. And so he was able to get some attention for himself that way. I don't think that's necessarily a smart kind of attention to get, with your own voters, because they will hear that and think, "Oh my gosh, Joe Manchin really is anti-gun." So then, Chuck Schumer came out, and he keeps vacillating back and forth. "Oh, we're going to vote on something, about guns. Oh, we're not going to vote on it." There was also this bill that was brought up, has been introduced in the Senate about, it was basically a national gun registry, and I think like a federal gun license, stupid stuff like they have in places like Canada and, European countries, New Zealand. Absolute pie-in-the-sky nonsense that will never happen. Chucky Schumer's, trying to talk a little bit like, "Oh yeah, we'll hold a vote," and then he's also saying, "Well, no, it'll never happen. It'll never work. We get stabbed in the back by these Republicans all the time." Because Schumer knows this is not going to happen. It's not feasible at this point. You're not winning on this issue. All the Dems can do is scream and cry and moan and try to make ammo expensive. And so finally Schumer tweets something specific that they're going to vote on. And what is it? It's something called the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act. And I thought, oh, doesn't that sound lovely? What could that be about? And I looked it up on the Congressional Budget Office. And I'll link to it in the description, I guess. so you can find it, because I did have to look. It wasn't like the first link or anything. Maybe it was the first link on Google. I was looking on Twitter initially. You can't find a whole lot of specifics about it, but the summary said that it would create these 3 offices within, I think, like the DHS and the Department of Justice and maybe the FBI too, which the FBI is part of the Department of Justice, so I can't remember exactly. But I think it created 3 different like offices within 3 federal agencies or departments, and their job was just to monitor basically white supremacy and to create a report on the most prevalent kind of domestic terrorism every 6 months, which of course is going to be white supremacy. And so that's the best Schumer could do. You know, Dems are demanding, oh my gosh, you gotta outlaw guns. And Schumer's like, let's crack down on freedom of speech on the internet? You know? Like, I mean, that's not a good thing, but like, compared to what the Dems want, that's insulting. I mean, yes, Dems do want to, monitor their political enemies on the internet and, presumably persecute them at some point down the road, legally, not just socially. But they wanted more red meat. Yes, pass this Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act and, create these Orwellian offices to monitor the online activities of Americans who are guilty of wrongthink, or at least are accused of wrongthink. So I look at this gun stuff, and it's just another example of why this country does not have a long-term political future. There is no one America. I don't think that there's even 2 Americas, but there are 2 functioning Americas. There are, 2 Americas that could, make it work, if they had to, if that makes sense. So, for example, if Blue America was one country, would it be a perfect, well-unified country? No, not at all. But it would be politically viable to a certain extent. Same thing is true of Red America. But ideally, I think that they would be, much more cohesive as actually quite a few different nations. But one thing is clear: the United States cannot function as a singular nation. There are just too many people in this country who are too hostile to one another, who want to destroy other people's way of life. And that's not sustainable in the long run. And that's why I've said for a long time, come the next financial collapse, come a real test of the strength of the United States, you will see a fracture into at least 2 pieces, but probably more. Because there is no national consensus, there is no national identity. It doesn't exist. And so the United States, as we know it today, is propelled forward only by its past momentum. And so, as soon as the U.S. hits some real headwinds, as soon as it loses that momentum, as soon as its forward progress is halted even momentarily, it won't be able to pick itself back up again. The way I've put it for a long time is that if I snap my fingers right now and the current U.S. regime disintegrated, would the people who live in what is currently the United States of America come together and rebuild our current regime again? Would they recreate it and want to build the same thing? No. There would be no consensus amongst the people of the 50 states to rebuild this same union. They would build their own unions, at least 2, but in all likelihood more than 2. Some states may join no union. And so that's what it means to be politically unstable. There is no longer any foundation for our current political system. So that doesn't mean that America is going to, fade away tomorrow into the mists of history because people disagree about guns or abortion. What it does mean is that the next time that the U.S. is put through the ringer, you're not going to see its citizens come together to defend it. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.